Welcome, everyone. This is the fourth in a series of webinars for food and beverage businesses. My name is Madeleine Snow. I'm from the University of Massachusetts in Lowell, and I would like to thank EPA Region 1 for the pollution prevention grant that is supporting this work, and also to Lauren Madison from UMass Amherst, who has been working with me very patiently for 2-3 years in this sector. And I appreciate, again, her patience. I'm not the easiest person to work with. So let's start, Lauren, if you would. Next slide. These are upcoming webinars. We have 2 more, one on water, and the last one is on results and telling your story, communicating success as well as challenges. And I am particularly interested in any of you who have some anecdotes or presentations that you might like to share about water reductions in the food and beverage sector. Please let me know. Next slide. So I've shown this pollution prevention hierarchy before, and many of you, if not most, could actually do a better presentation of this. But the key concept is that rather than deal with the end result of a particular emission or pollution issue, that you try and reduce it at its source. I realize that I've been in the environmental business for 46 years. I started in the water programs when we were just dealing with raw discharges of sewage. So we were only looking at that red portion of the pyramid. And bit by bit, over decades and years and experience, we've been moving upstream, trying to deal with issues before they become a problem. Next slide. And one of the themes of these webinars is that pollution prevention is a business strategy. And we hope that you will pick up at least one idea or one thought about this topic and pollution prevention as a result of this webinar. Next slide. And this is one of my favorite sayings: the cheapest, cleanest, and safest energy is the energy you don't use. And last key points, Lauren, next one. My big thing is to ask questions. Ask questions about your current uses, your current practices around energy, about toxics, you name it. But just ask questions rather than assume that this is the way we've been doing it and we'll continue that way. And my next big key point is to get an audit, preferably one that looks at process and not just at lighting and HVAC and things like that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeleine, and hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Madison. I'm an engineer in the Center for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I'll be giving an introduction to energy efficiency in the food and beverage sector, information on resources available to help businesses become more efficient, and some brief case studies of companies we've worked with. We will also hear directly from Allison Jolly at PLentis Group, a company we did an audit for a couple years ago. I'm going to start with a brief lesson on understanding electric bills. This week I saw a good quotation from my congresswoman: "That which gets measured gets done," and that partially inspired me to start out with this, because a good first step to reducing your energy costs is looking at your bills and understanding how your energy use is being measured and charged. And electricity bills tend to be the most complex, so that's what we're talking about here. The electric rate structures vary depending on your utility, facility type, and size, but for commercial and industrial facilities, the bills are often based on 2 measures of electricity use. Electricity consumption is the total electricity used, and it's measured in kilowatt hours. Some facilities have what's called a time of use rate, in which the utility splits the consumption into peak and off-peak periods and charges a higher rate for consumption during peak hours and a lower rate on nights and weekends. And the second measure, which people are generally less familiar with, is demand, which is the peak electric use during the billing period. The demand charge is typically based on the peak 15-minute period during the billing period. So a substantial portion of your monthly bill could be based on having high electricity use for just a few minutes. So there are many ways to reduce your energy costs. Improving efficiency, which is mostly what we'll be talking about for the rest of this presentation, reduces your overall energy consumption and usually your electric demand too. If your facility is on a time of use rate and charged for demand, you can also reduce your costs and your impact on your regional electric system by reducing your use during peak hours or reducing your peak demand. For example, some facilities have one energy intensive process that only runs periodically, and they might be able to look at shifting it to run at night rather than during peak hours. Or in some facilities, the peak demand is due to a spike when they turn on all of their equipment on Monday morning, and they can reduce their demand by spreading out their startup process over a bit longer time. And some utilities have demand reduction programs in which they notify customers ahead of expected system peaks, such as the hottest summer afternoons, and then they give facilities incentives to reduce demand by turning off non-essential equipment during those periods. I'm going to talk a bit more about the general benefits of energy efficiency. You took the time to join us today, so you probably are convinced that your company could benefit from improving its efficiency, but I like to point out quickly how wide-ranging the benefits can be. As we just discussed, and you know, a key motivator is the cost savings from reducing electric bills or energy bills in general. But we are also increasingly seeing customers looking to support companies that have sustainable practices, and other benefits can include reduced maintenance and an improved work environment. And something a lot of people don't really think about is that if you're interested in generating or buying renewable energy for your facility, it is important to consider efficiency first, because using less energy overall will reduce the investment required for the renewables. Now I'm going to talk about some common energy efficiency opportunities in food and beverage businesses. And hopefully this will get you thinking about some things you might be able to do in your facility. So ways to improve efficiency include replacing equipment, modifying existing equipment or processes, using automated controls to optimize equipment operation, and behavioral changes. Some of these improvements can be made with little or no investment, while others require larger capital investments, but the savings can often pay that back in a short time. I'm starting with the simplest area, which is lighting. LED lighting is highly efficient, long-lasting, and provides good light quality. If your facility has other types of lighting, such as fluorescent, which was the most common several years ago, it would likely be cost-effective to upgrade to LEDs. And an easy way to save energy in general is turning off equipment when not in use. And for lighting, we recommend installing controls to help with that. Most food and beverage businesses have some kind of refrigeration or cooling equipment, ranging from the display coolers shown here to large chiller systems. There are many types of controls that can be installed to optimize operation of refrigeration equipment. In large cooling systems, energy can often be saved by improving sequencing to run the most efficient equipment first, or run the equipment that is most appropriately sized for the cooling load. And many coolers and refrigerated areas are not well sealed off from other spaces. This can be addressed by installing night covers on open cases, strip curtains on walk-in coolers, or automated doors on refrigerated rooms. In ovens and process heating systems, energy can be saved by adding insulation to equipment such as steam or water pipes, hot water tanks, or ovens, or their beer tanks as shown in this picture. Boiler performance should be tested regularly, and periodic maintenance and tuning can optimize operation and increase efficiency of boilers. And exhaust from heating equipment can often be captured with heat exchangers and then used for another purpose, such as preheating air or water entering a boiler. And in steam systems, steam traps are automatic valves that filter out condensate from the steam. But when they fail, which does happen, steam can be wasted, so those should be maintained regularly. Many food processing facilities use compressed air, and I noticed that somebody mentioned that in the chat at the beginning. Generating compressed air is energy intensive and therefore costly, but the good news is that there are many ways to improve efficiency of compressed air systems. I show that gauge here because a question I ask when I visit a new facility is, why is the compressed air pressure set at a certain level? And the answer is often, we don't know, or because that's the way it's always been. Compressors are often set to operate at higher pressure than needed, and energy can be saved simply by reducing the pressure setting to the necessary level. And that can make a big difference in your energy use. And a typical plant loses about 20% of its compressed air through leaks. So there is significant savings potential in ongoing leak repair. And that is something that needs to be done on an ongoing basis to keep up with it. Repairing leaks can also help to maintain the needed pressure in the system. And because compressed air is energy intensive, it should only be used when needed, but often it's used for things where there are alternatives. Many people aren't aware of it. So that's one of the reasons we're here today is to talk about things like that. There are often cases where something like a blower would be possible, and it's a lot more cost effective. And having sufficient air storage is key to optimizing operation of compressed air systems. I hope that got you thinking about potential opportunities in your facility or facilities you have worked with. Now, how can you find and pursue these opportunities? There are a lot of good ways to identify energy efficiency opportunities, and I recommend using a combination of all of those. We encourage you to have somebody come in to do an assessment for your business, and I'll talk more about that on upcoming slides. But employees can also have ideas for how to improve efficiency of the equipment or processes they work with. A treasure hunt is an event in which employees collaborate to find energy savings opportunities, and you can find information and resources about that on the Energy Star website. And equipment vendors can be partners in selecting efficient equipment and making sure it runs efficiently. So I encourage you to ask them questions about that. As Madeline said earlier, asking questions is a good thing. Now more on the benefits on having an external energy audit or assessment. It can be valuable to have a fresh set of eyes that might notice new things that, like I said, sometimes people in the facility just have things the way they've always been, but having somebody else come in and ask those questions can be good. And energy auditors should have specific expertise in energy technologies that most people working in a food or beverage facility won't have. And they will often bring metering tools that they will use to measure performance of specific equipment. That can help to calculate energy savings potential and to prioritize your opportunities and to identify issues with the operation of specific equipment. An assessment can not only identify new savings opportunities, but it can help in other ways, such as quantifying the savings potential for opportunities that your staff have thought of, or helping with decisions about the most cost-effective option for changes that you are planning in your facility. And we at UMass Amherst are part of the Industrial Assessment Center program, which has centers based at universities around the country. The centers offer free, in-depth, and impartial assessments to facilities, including food and beverage processors. In addition to helping businesses reduce their energy and resource use, the program provides valuable training for engineering students in energy technology. And I know because years ago, I was one of those students. Eligible facilities have annual energy costs between $100,000 and $2.5 million, though there can sometimes be flexibility in that. If you don't fall into that size range, there are other resources available, which I'll talk more about on the next slide, and I can also help you connect with. And for Industrial Assessment Center audits, on average, we provide 7 recommendations, and we provide detailed explanations of what those recommendations are, why we recommend them, and what the savings potential for them would be, and estimated implementation costs. And in total, those are projected to save $145,000 on average per year if implemented. And we focus on recommendations that will be cost effective. So the average payback period for recommendations is 2 years. And there are several other types of programs that provide technical and/or financial support for energy efficiency, including state or utility programs, which offer financial incentives that can help you implement energy efficiency measures identified during an audit or other efforts. I recommend your regional industrial assessment center as a starting point, and you can find a list of those on our website, ceere.org/IAC, or you can email me if you have questions about resources in your region, and Madeline will be sending all of these links out after the webinar. If you hear a little squeaking noise, that's my dog playing with his ball, in case anybody was wondering. And one food business that we worked with a couple years ago was PLentis Group. And now we're going to hear a bit from Allison Jolly about their experience getting an assessment. Hi, Allison. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. It's a nice way to take a break from the regular course of business. Something based on your I just learned something on your slides, realizing that we did our energy audit in 2019, and I'm realizing that our operations team hasn't really, because we did, we took on some of the really easy changes like the compressed air. It would be cool to do an internal look at some of our energy bills to sort of map out those potential savings that were identified. So my family, we own and operate a food manufacturing facility here in Lowell, and we've been operating for 19 years now. And for 17 of those 19 years, we kind of had just our heads in the sand a little bit, just trying to grow our business and trying to fill those orders as they were coming in. I think that we're sort of now in the late adolescent stage of our business, and we have through our community partners, nonprofit community partners, we've been able to get connected with UMass Lowell, who is our neighbor. We've been operating our business 4 miles away from one of the leading sustainability programs in the country. So it took connecting to our community in a deeper way to learn the ways that we can positively affect our food system and really start to think about our impact on the environment. It's hard when you're just trying to focus on the operations of a business. Nobody, especially a startup, nobody really has time or potentially expertise to sort of go through our process with a fine-tooth comb. But that was what the Industrial Assessment Center did on their day-long audit with us. It was a very informative process with a lot of really smart people, and it was very different than the audits that are offered by our people trying to sell us energy solutions. Much more impartial. And not only did the IAC, they're not trying to sell you anything, they also can, like Lauren mentioned, inform you about programs that you can get some of your upgrades paid for by grants. So that's really good information to learn. Sometimes that information is buried in places that you don't always see. So that was really cool. It sort of opened up our eyes to some of the things that some of the other opportunities that we have in efficiency. One of those things was through connecting with Madeline at the Center for Sustainable Production, we got connected to Lauren at IAC, and we also got connected to the Toxic Reduction Initiative, so that was cool. And we've been a part of, we got a grant to see how we could more efficiently clean our kettles. And that was a super cool process. And we got to be a case study and learn more about lean manufacturing through Turi. So the big lesson was if you can take just a little bit of time to look around you and see what, and sort of accept the resources that are out there, you will become sort of just a better community partner. We like to think how we're affecting our community positively by providing employment, but we also want to prepare for the future to see if we can make our food system a little bit more resilient. And things like, I noticed that somebody in the comments was talking about energy capture. At some point, when the IAC came in and did our audit, they did recommend an energy capture system that was at the time seemed like a pretty high spend. I think it was $800,000 all in, and we had just completed a big capital expenditure program by adding an addition to our facility. But 2 years later, that, and after seeing what has happened across the country with the weaknesses in the power grids, that seems like more of it seems as we're planning sort of our next expansion, becoming more sufficient when it comes to electricity seems like a really good idea. And who knows what the current administration and future administrations will bring when it comes to carbon taxes or things like that. We want to be ahead of the game.
Thanks, Allison. One thing that was interesting about our audit for PLentis Group is that we didn't find as many recommendations as we sometimes do. But that was because they were already doing a lot of things right. So one thing about an audit is, we look at what you're doing right and we put that in our report, and then we look at opportunities to improve. And so either way, either you get something good out of it, either affirmation that you're doing a good job, or ways you can improve.
Yeah, part of me wishes because we began our capital investment in our new facility at the end of 2017, and it took a long 18 months to complete from breaking ground to getting our occupancy permit. And we were in a position where we could outfit that new wing of the facility with new pieces of equipment. And part of me, so I think that's why things were really going well. If we had got hooked up with you all before that, I think it would have been a whole different story. I recommend to people, it would be really cool to get this assessment done when you're about to make, when you're about to maybe renew your capital expenditure budget, or if you are considering improvements to your facility, because not only do some of the improvements that IAC made, or recommendations for improvement that they made, not only are they making us more efficient and safer, it also, that's when you're thinking about high cost items, they will pay for themselves. That was one thing, that every line item included a return on investment. And when we're trying to make these wish lists with our leadership team, that made it really easy to sell some of these process changes. But if you're already about to spend money to improve your facility, you might be able to recapture that quickly if you take the energy auditor's advice. So,
right, when you're making plans to planning an expansion or buying new equipment, it is a great time to have somebody take a look at opportunities for improvement. There's never really a bad time, although there are times when you can kind of catch things during the planning stage. It's great. I was talking to Allison about this the other day, and I said that the IAC program allows us to go back to facilities every 5 years. So And she said, oh, cool, we can, take another look.
I know,
at
I was like, let's book it
how
now.
things are going, so.
It also forces you to think, to think farther ahead than maybe is natural. And I know that, we're in the year of the commercial space and nonprofit space is about the 5-year plan, but what's beyond that? What can we do now to ensure that our business will still be employing people, after our owner is gone, or 10, 20 years, we want to still be around, So if we can keep having that attitude of continuous improvement that is embodied by the Center for Sustainable Production and the IAC, it ensures the future.
Yes. That's one of my upcoming slides says something just like that. Okay, thank you, Allison. If anybody has any questions for Allison or me, we can discuss those in a minute, but I'm going to jump back into the slides and just finish them up. So a few other companies that we have worked with. A few years ago, as part of this initiative, we did an in-person workshop, and there we met staff from Cisco Brewery in New Hampshire, which at the time was named Red Hook Brewery. And they had an active sustainability program and had already made some efforts to reduce their energy use. But we were able to identify 6 new recommendations, including recovering and reusing waste heat from some of their processes, improving insulation on some tanks, I believe, improving their use of automated controls to optimize operation and energy use. Sorry about my dog. And the projected savings for these recommendations was almost $60,000 annually, with a payback period of only 6 months on the implementation cost. And several years ago, we worked with a commercial bakery that was able to reduce their energy costs by 19% by implementing all 9 of our recommendations, including some similar recommendations, as well as compressed air system improvements and lighting up and HVAC upgrades. And I borrowed this graph from one of my favorite past clients, Ben & Jerry's, who I worked with when I was at Efficiency Vermont. This shows that with ongoing efforts and continuous improvement, as Allison said, a facility can keep making delicious products while using less and less energy over time. And Billy Davis from Ben & Jerry's is here with us today, I believe. So thanks to her for making this slide and for her leadership in making this happen in her company. And in summary, energy efficiency can provide a number of benefits to your business. Having an energy audit is a great way to get started, but it is an ongoing process. And ideally, efficiency would become part of your company culture over time. And remember, you are not on your own in this. We in the Industrial Assessment Center and many others are here to help you out. And here is contact information for me, Madeline, and others who have been involved in this initiative. And again, Madeline will be sending all of this out to people who registered today. But I really encourage you to get in touch with me or others so we can assist you or help connect you with the appropriate resources for your business. And with that, are there any questions or comments?
I think you can just unmute yourselves, but any questions or additions, experiences with some of the recommendations that and findings and insights that Lauren and Allison just went through?
Hi, Madeline. I have a question. It has to do with the rebates that are offered by utilities. I'm just curious if those change frequently, and are they difficult to identify?
That's a good question. It really varies because they are offered often at the utility level or sometimes at the state level. So we have people from several states on here, so I can't give really a blanket answer, although I've worked in a few of those states. They a lot of the incentives that food and beverage businesses would be getting are custom incentives. So there's not necessarily like a set amount. For some things there are, if you upgrade a motor that's 20 horsepower, you get a X dollar per horsepower incentive or something like that. But a lot of them are custom where they'll work with you to look at what the project is, what the savings is, how much it's going to cost to implement, and then they'll determine based on that what is an appropriate incentive, and how that works really varies all over the country. But they can be very generous incentives sometimes. They can definitely take projects that your business would not be able to afford and make them very affordable. There are also some financing programs where you can pay back over time, or sometimes have the savings, the energy savings taken out of the implementation cost taken out of energy savings. So there are a lot of different options, and it really depends where you are, but it's definitely worth looking into. And one thing as part of our assessments we do is try to connect facilities with their local programs so they can find out about incentives for our recommendations.
And if I could just add, Lauren, one really, really important thing is if you're even thinking about a potential change in terms of equipment or purchasing this, like contact the utilities way early. Don't go through the process, buy them, and then look for the incentives. So super early thinking about it, and know who your contact is, and get them on speed dial.
Yeah, that's an important point. The earlier you get them involved, the more you might be able to get in terms of technical assistance or an understanding of what kind of incentives are available. And sometimes because there are some programs where they have a set incentive budget for the year, and if it gets used up before the end of the year, then there might be a period where incentives aren't available. So the sooner you can get in there, the better, for a lot of reasons.
And establish that relationship.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Dave, it sounded like you had some compressed air leak detector experiences. Would you like to share them if you're still on the line?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. We had in Ohio, we had one time. We had one of those ultrasonic compressed air leaks. We didn't do as much with food. It was more at some of the smaller auto body shops, kind of demonstrating the payback. But it'd be the same at in a food or manufacturing setting. Just detecting leaks. And I think some of them, they're handheld devices, and they can reach pretty far. So even high ceilings, and you can kind of target in. Then there's charts out there that show you like the hole size and the amount of CFM loss and what it cost. And it's pretty significant. And Ohio has as much experience as like North Carolina. There's a couple of small business assistance programs that really, that's what they do. They go out, they target sectors. But when we've worked with bigger manufacturers and food manufacturers in the past, there's, anything with like compressed air or heating and treating, water, in the food industry, and even like you talk about brewery industry, there's like you're raising temperatures or lowering temperatures, there's always opportunities to find, energy losses or energy recovery. So good conversation. It's good to hear everybody kind of talking the same thing. So.
Great. While we're putting on people on the spot, I don't really like doing that, but Billy, if you're still here, would you like to jump in and share anything about your experience, because you're such a leader in this?
A leader on exactly which topic? On rebates or energy reduction? I mean,
you're a leader on all of it. Billy's at Ben & Jerry's, as I mentioned, and I worked with her 15 years ago almost. Yep. Any advice you would give to companies getting started, or anything about continuous?
I would. Certainly. I would say start with your low-hanging fruit first. We did some exercises where, obviously we all know lighting is your low-hanging fruit. technology advances so fast, you can usually update your lighting every 5 years. At least that's what we're finding. So we've done a couple iterations of lighting upgrades, but once you take care of your low-hanging fruit, then the work really becomes difficult. And then you have to pull in people to help you with audits and engineers to help you identify where you're going to get your greatest impact. And what we would do is do a brainstorming list of, and a wish list of everything we could think of, and then also outside audits and contractors to tell us what we could do with technology. And we would use like a prioritization tool. So how difficult is it to implement? How expensive is it to implement? And what's the impact? So we would calculate all these things and go after the high impact, easy projects first in that matrix. And then we could plan for the long-term projects through capital projects down the road. And, you know, eventually you keep driving down until you're waiting for new technology to replace some of the work that you've done. So it is a continuous improvement for sure, but you need a lot of outside sources to help you get there. Well, we could never do this on our own. Efficiency Vermont here in Vermont has helped us exponentially with their expertise.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Billy. Does anybody else have any questions or experience? Anybody else from a food business would be interested in hearing if you have done any of this in your business, or if you're thinking of getting started.
We had a whole bunch of beer people register, but I think they must be off drinking Friday afternoon. I'm not quite sure.
Maybe they'll watch the recording later on. Good morning.
This is Dave again, but I will say for the brewery stuff, I know they're not on here, but the Brewery Association, the BA Association has, if you join now, I think it's a little harder to download the resources, but they created a bunch of created an energy guide, and then they created one specifically for water use and wastewater use, and all that ties into energy. So John Steers, I think, helped write them, who's part of he used to be with Anheuser, and so that's a great resource that's still out there that we give the breweries in Ohio, craft breweries and stuff like that. It's good toolkits.
Excellent. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to actually, some people love small groups, some people hate them. I'm a small group person, but I'm going to break us into 3 groups of 7 approximately. And this is just an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit. And I'm asking you to think about what's the one thing that you heard or thought about today that you think you could actually apply to your company or to your business. The breakout groups are not recorded, so you don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to break it out into groups of 4, actually, if that's okay. And it'll just be for about 6 minutes. All right. And then you'll come back and just put it in the chat later on. What's the one thing that you heard that or are thinking about that you could apply to your own company or to the companies that you work with if you're a technical assistance provider? See you soon. I hope I do this right. 2. Joan, I'm sorry. I tried to get you into a small group. I'm sorry if I lost you.
I think I must have got the wrong time or something. I don't know. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're just finishing up. Where are you located, Joan? We're all coming back. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Madeline.
Hey, Billy. I have this wicked hunger for some ice cream right now. I really do, Billy. And your kind of ice cream. You're on mute.
What's your favorite flavor? What flavor would it be?
The chocolate with the cherry one. Is that Cherry Garcia?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's
Yeah,
a classic.
it is. Never gets old.
Okay.
Energy suck that I didn't hear anybody bring up. I just wanted to mention, and that is that most of the dietary supplement dry powder manufacturers I've worked in mix for a period of time in these great big cubic ribbon blenders, and they don't know how long they have to mix to get good blend uniformity. So they just have a blanket amount of time that they mix for, say, 15 minutes, and then dispense their powder into something else. And it would really be helpful for them to find out just how long some of these paddle blenders can mix efficiently in 2 minutes. So to be making powders all day long at 15 minutes a blend, you know, these are thousands of pounds, 2,000 pounds at a time of powder that they're mixing, and they're not considering energy cost of what we're mixing.
Thank you, Daisy.
Sure.
So Jennifer, we were together. Can you share what one of your thoughts was about, like what one of your takeaway was?
Oh, I had a couple. And just by way of introduction, I work for the Small Business Environmental Assistance Program in Wisconsin. So having to be a jack of all trades, I have to learn as much as I can about various things. And one of the things that hadn't occurred to me in terms of energy is air compression, and realizing, I mean, that's just not food and beverage, that's across the board. And so that was just kind of a big, moment. The other thing was just noting, anytime you have an increase or reduction in temperature, there is an opportunity there. And I guess I just tend to think about heating things up rather than cooling things down, and just temperature differential equals potential opportunity for energy reduction. I walked away with that.
That's great. And air compressors used to be kind of my specialty. And so I'm very excited that you learned something about them today. There are a lot of good resources for more on how to improve efficiency of compressed air systems through the Compressed Air Challenge. So that's a good place to learn more. They have classes that are really helpful. I just put my email address in the chat. If anybody wants help finding more about that, let me know. I also put in the chat again the link to sign up for the next couple sessions and to watch the recordings of previous sessions.
Lauren, can I ask you, I'm seeing where particularly the companies, who are doing Six Sigma, they actually have compressor leak teams. And and they really go around, and it isn't just a one-shot deal. It's like a continuous effort.
Yeah, that's great. Because leaks keep coming up. So, I mean, it's good to have an audit to identify a bunch of them at once, but then it's good to, like I said, kind of make this part of your company culture and identify and repair them on an ongoing basis, because they really cost a lot more than people realize.
Allison, I love you talked about how cool it was to use energy efficiency panels and discussions to connect with competitors. Can you say a little bit more about that? I love the idea.
Yeah, we were reminiscing about a roundtable discussion pre-pandemic that we had, that you hosted, you and Turi hosted at UMass. And it was an opportunity personally for me to sit down and sort of and meet and learn from another soup company, the facilities manager at another soup company, who that's a soup company that's like 10 times the size of ours, but we do sort of work alongside each other, and we do compete for business. So we were able to learn about some of that we're in the same boat, but also that what to sort of thinking about what to expect as we scale. And it was not no trade secrets were shared, but really that's it wasn't in that. None of that energy was there. It was just about, hey, we were talking about EPA audits, and we were like, okay, so what are some of your challenges with this chemical? What are some of your challenges with staffing? What are some of your issues when it comes? They had opened up a few plants out of state, and what that, and he was in charge of was all of it. So it was just really I got sort of more relationship capital out of that meeting than I do talking with their sales team or their founders at trade shows and stuff like that. It was it was just really cool. This is stuff that I wouldn't have learned if if I go and knock on the door, they'd be like, no, sorry. But it was it was just it felt so, that was like the congeniality feel, and the he offered to be a resource if we need it as a growing company. And I thought that was just, very classy and cool to be able to connect over, common regulatory matters.
Anyone else to give us an idea of what's the one thing that you'll sort of apply or could apply in your company or to those that you work with? Well, with that, I want to thank Lauren and Allison for great presentations and discussions and insights. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the recording off, but for anyone who would like to stay on for another 5, 10, 15 minutes, we can continue the discussion.